Hello and welcome back to the channel, everybody. It's Aaron here, and today I have for you a little different video today, as I'm going to be starting out a new series. That's going to be called my Pyro's Guide to Gunpla. Basically, this is going to be my little beginner's guide to basically anybody coming into the hobby or starting out, or just got introduced to Gunpla and don't know what to do or don't know what they need. So I'm going to be doing this little series little by little, making videos on everything that you're going to be needing, what to do. So like helpful guides, tips, and tricks that I've learned over the years of my time doing Gunpla and whatnot. And doing little by little help out. So without further ado, let's start out with the first thing when it comes to Gunpla. And we're back, and the first thing you're actually going to need to do when you start Gunpla is, well, a model kit. As you're basically starting out the hobby, you're coming into it, you probably grabbed a model kit off either the shelves or whatnot, or went to a store to order online, because either you saw somebody online basically build it or whatnot, and you liked it, and you want to get into the hobby. So you went to either to your local store. I'm going to go with Target, because right now Target is currently the only one at the moment, but at least when it comes to like availability, when it comes to model kits, that's going to have them. And this right here is going to be a model kit that you'll probably see at Target on occasion, because the Gundam wing kits are usually there on occasion, along with some of the Gundam Seed ones as well. This right here is Gundam Death Size. This is a model kit right here I recently acquired a while ago. And what's it called? And first things first, you're going to do when you basically get your model kit, you're going to unbox it. See right here, empty box. And then you're going to go through all your runners. As model kits, especially from Bandai's end, all your model kits are going to be in little plastic baggies to protect them most of the time. And you're going to be and you should have a set number of runners for your model kits so you can build. You got one of the things I always tell people to do when you get your model kits is always to check them, make sure everything's there. Going through them all, I can see right here the particle effects for the death size. And then you get yourself the manual. This right here is what you're gonna need to build your model kit. And one of the things I always tell people when they're building, and well, especially for beginners, go read the manual, count how many runners or how many things you have on there that you're gonna need, and then go back and compare what you have. Which I'm gonna tell you, I have everything here, but this is something I always tell people to do, just to make sure, depending on where you buy your stuff and whatnot, make sure everything's there. Because sometimes I've had on occasions, mainly when I go buy stuff on stores, that sometimes some pieces are missing, which is a rarity. But that's also why a lot of these model kits, at least depending on the stores, have like those plastic strips surrounding them a lot, so people can't open them and whatnot. And after you go through, you read the runner, you read the manual. You'll go through the list. Now, one thing I will say towards a lot of more modern Gunpla compared to some of the older ones, a lot of the writing is now in English. You can see right there, so it's a little bit more helpful to you, a little bit much more organized. What's going on like back then? So a lot of it's still Japanese. I mean, you still see a lot of it still in Japanese too, but you can see the English there to help you out a little bit much more better. Granted, for me, the only thing that you kind of only need to understand, at least when it comes to like the English and words or numbers, are basically the pieces part. That's what you're going to need. You don't really need to read the parts, but now they do give you a little bit more helpful tips in the manuals to like make sure, like right here with the leg, when you're attaching the joints, to make sure it fits perfectly well. And then we have the back pictures right here, which will tell you a little bit more of the death size itself for all of its weaponry. A little bit story right there for the death size itself. I know there's not a review for the death size, but this is just giving you overall on the model kit and giving you basically a full-on picture of what your model kit should be done after it's all done and set. And yeah, now going for the next part. And now we're back, and the next thing that you're going to be needing are basically going to be tools and a mat. Granted, a lot of these at least beginner Gunpla tools and mats you can buy on Amazon for like around 20-30 bucks. So starting out, this is my mat right here. This is the one that I use for when I'm usually building my model kits. Let me adjust the camera a little bit so you guys can see a little bit much more better. Granted, as you see right here, as I do use this mat a lot. You can see a lot of the paint, a lot of the putty I use for a lot of the projects I've done over the years. I've had this for like 10 plus years, so it actually lasted me this well. These are kind of like bendy rubber like mats, so they're really good for what you need for your model kits. And overall, this is what you're always going to need when you're putting all your plastic, all the runners, or when you're putting the pieces together. So when you go do whatever you need to do, this is what you're gonna need. Usually you can find these mats either by themselves. Usually they cost sometimes around cheap, like around $5 to, I think the most expensive I've seen either like 10 to 15 maybe, but that's very expensive. Now going off for runners, now going from the mats themselves, we go for where you're gonna need to cut out the runners of the plastic. You're gonna need nippers. These right here, I guess you would call them the scissors, because I know for people who start out Gunpla and don't have the correct tools, they tend to either use scissors or toenail clippers and whatnot. Right here, the nippers are basically what you're going to need to cut out the runners. So basically right here, here's a good example of a runner right here. You would use the nippers right here to cut where you need to cut the plastic, and boom. That's a little bit demonstration of what you need to cut with. Granted, I have two of these. The green one right here was my original one. Though as you can see, it's a little bit more thicker, more dulled, because this technically is beginner, but still useful. Usually I use this one right here to cut the pieces. Like if I have like pieces on end here, I usually cut all the way at the edge, just so that way when I cut out the edge, I could always use my newer center one to basically do a much more better clean cut. Now going from that, let's go to the other tools. And now, folks, now after we're done with the nippers section, now we're going to go with our blades. Mainly what you're going to need to cut out the excessive parts after you take out the runners out of the pieces out of the runners. You have your X-Acto knife right here. This is going to be your blade that you're going to use to cut out the little pieces to basically take off any excessive plastic on them. A good example, I did have something else. I did technically make another video. Okay, yeah, you know what? This is a good example. So right here, you have let me actually take everything out of that's causing the thing to go out of focus. Okay, so see right there, there's like the little remaining plastic right there. Those right here are usually the nut marks. Usually you use the X-Acto blade to wipe off or cut off any of the excessive, so you're gonna have a clean cut so that afterwards, once you go through sanding, it'll be smooth and everything else will look very clear and shiny, and that's what you usually use the X-Acto knife for. Granted, you technically could use it for scribing if you want, but usually if you want to do some more detail work that requires scribing, you usually require a scribing knife. This right here is not fully a scribing knife, but this is like one of my hand tool set of knives that I got. Like I'll show you the box right here. Granted, it's not meant. This is my more precision. Well, this is more for precision knives, but I kind of somewhat use this for for scribing when I need to do a little bit more detail work. Though it's a little bit more hard because it's not the precise scribing tools that you need. But I kind of use this and I kind of make it work for scribing when you want to add a little bit more detail to your model kits. Like a good example of like details, like see right here, like the little. Let's go back to my star burning. You can see right here with my star burning, like the little detail works, like where the head Vulcans are at, where the space plates right there. You can see where a lot of detail work is usually etched in when they usually do it at the factory. They want to do a little bit much more detail work, like add much more like design lines or make a little bit more output, like make this little line right here on the knee joint right here a little bit more pronounced. You can. So I probably would have done that with panel lining. But that's what you usually use for scribing. Granted, these aren't for scribing purposes. I mean, they technically are, as they are technically precision knife set, but they're not for that purpose, but I kind of use them for that purpose. But I would still recommend getting a scribing set. Usually they cost around, I don't know, 10 to 20 bucks, depending for the cheap ones. And the X-Acto knife, usually you can get these usually as a pair because you usually have two of them with the blades themselves. Very cheap, because the other thing too about X-Acto knives, you go through them a lot. That's why you usually get an X-Acto knife, and usually the pair of X-Acto knives always comes with a little pocket of extra blades, because the blades here, they're cheap. They break a lot, and I've already gone through like a billion of them through my lifetime building, because they break a lot. That's the reason why sometimes I use a little bit much more other center blades that are a little bit much more thicker than my X-Acto knife. I usually use the X-Acto knife when I need for taking out any nub marks or excessive plastic from my model kits. Now going from the X-Acto blades, we go to my files and sandpaper. Granted, files more anything else. Usually, I'm going to show you, these right here were the original 3 files that I had. These actually came with the box that I got off Amazon that came with the mat, my original green nippers, the X-Acto blade. These things, and I'm actually surprised I still have these like 10 plus years later, and these 3 files still pretty good. There are different types of files. This one's more square. This one's more kind of like triangle shape. While this one's more curved. They all have their own purposes when you're sanding, and they're really good, and they've really been useful for me. What's it called? Granted, I will still try to get different types of files too, because sometimes when you're doing model kits, you need different types of grids. I actually got these types of files right here, cheap ones off Hobby Lobby, because I actually just sell them in like multiple packs. I forget what grit these are, because I know these are probably between 100 and 180. I know this one is. And these are really good for filing when you need them. I don't have my smooth, what's called files. I don't know where they're at. But usually when you want to like file off or sand something off, usually try to get these. And they're always useful. What's it called? You can probably buy these as well. These cheap ones on Amazon as well for cheap as well. Usually, I think a pack of these, if I remember correctly last time, was like around $40 or not $40. It was like 20 to 40 of them, and then it was around like $5 or $6 or 10 for like 40 of them. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I bought more of these, because I bought a bulk load of them, so I've not really gone back to replace them. And this file right here, I don't know where I got this. What's it called? This one I just found laying around and just used it. That's probably one of my sisters, but hey, what's it called? Nail files still work regardless, because the grit for them is still really useful for model kits. But I will say, get a different amount always for model kits, always go for the lighter grit, because they're plastic. They're not meant to be on hard surfaces. They're like wood or metal with other different stuff too, because I tend to also use that too. And then I also, though this one's from Dollar Tree, I do have technically sandpaper that I use as well for other stuff too. Especially when I'm like, usually I use sandpaper when I'm doing custom model kits and I'm doing either painting or spray painting, and I want to have the entirety of the plastic basically sanded down, so either paint or primer will stick on there a little bit better. I tend to get like a bulk of these actually at Dollar Tree, because I actually sell a bulk of them for like $1.25, which is actually a pretty good deal. So I always have a good stack of sandpaper when I need them, which is always good. Because when you start getting to the hobby of Gunpla, you're going to eventually start customizing your model kits to how you want them, and then painting is going to be one of those things too. So having a good amount of sandpaper to be able to sand the surface of the plastic for whatever model kit you're either doing a custom work or paint job towards, having basic sandpaper, especially the soft sandpaper to use, will be useful. Now let's go off from the files and sandpaper to... Now we're going to tweezers, which is going to be useful a lot, especially earlier, especially if you're dealing with a lot of the stickers, which if you basically start in a hobby and you're not too confident in painting or doing anything else, you're going to be needing tweezers if you're going to be putting all the stickers that you get in the runners most of the time. Granted, a lot of modern model kits really aren't using stickers anymore. Usually the only stickers we see nowadays are either for the head unit, like the eyes, and the sensors for like the back and front of the Gunpla's head, and maybe some stickers for some of the weaponry. But pretty much nowadays, most of the Gunplas are kind of mostly accurate, and you really don't need to. But still, there's also going to be those that later down the line, if you want to do decal or some other stuff too, tweezers are going to be useful. And these are 3 types of tweezers I usually have. These are the little thin ones, square ones for a little bit much more surface, and then the angle ones, which I use a lot, especially when I'm doing parts. I will say, because my hands are very big, there are sometimes that tweezers are kind of needed for putting in some really, really small parts. Granted, not towards my Gunpla. A lot of the times where I really needed tweezers to put in some of the smaller stuff actually happened when I was building the Star Wars model kits, because they have for the Mandalorians and Boba Fett, they have the mini missiles on their legs, and they're very tiny, and trying to put them into the little holes kind of difficult with big hands. So what's it called, having the tweezers, especially the angle tweezers, really did help put them in. Tweezers are always helpful, and sometimes they're usually added or inserted into, depending if you buy a bundle of tools for model kits. But yeah, tweezers always helpful, especially later down the line if you want to add decal to make your model kits look a little bit more nice or anime accurate. I know a lot of times when people do for your UCK, especially for the real grades, a lot of decals are used a lot, so these are useful. Now going off from the tweezers, we have our drills, because sometimes these are going to be needed. This is going to be needed for later down the line. Our pinwheel drills, or pinwheel, yeah. The little drills, mini drills that you use by hand. These right here are going to be useful later down the line, especially when you do repair work for your model kits. Which, let me tell you, a lot of times pieces will break and you're going to need them. But sometimes pieces break into parts where you're like, where you try to like glue them back together, they're not going to stick. These are going to be helpful. This actually will be a trick I'll be doing later down the line that requires the drills. Usually, when a piece breaks, like a joint, like a leg joint or whatnot, usually that falls off. Usually, what I usually do, granted, usually like sand the pieces apart on both sides where the piece breaks off. I'll do like a detail further of that one, how that's done. But the general purpose is like you sand the pieces off, then you drill holes on both sides, grab a little thin wire of brass or copper, depends on what you get cheaper. Usually I get them, I think I usually get the brass one on Hobby Lobby on occasion. I should still have a good amount of those still. You insert those, depending on the lengths, into the broken pieces, into the hip joint, depending on where the joint is at. Drill the piece hole in there. You put the cut wire to the lengths. What's it called? Put the pieces back together. Usually use a cement of some kind. What I use as well, right here, Mr. Cement for plastic, Hobby Lobby, Mr. Hobbies, Mr. Cement. This right here is plastic cement, which is used to melt plastic, which is very useful, which we'll talk about in a second. But use that to be able to melt the plastic and fuse the pieces back together, and you should be good to go. Granted, a lot of times, you kind of don't need to do the drill stuff. You could always just use, like I mentioned, the Hobby Cement, put it on both where the joint parts is, put it back together, just keep it there, hold it until it sets in, and just let it in. It usually is good, but most of the time when you break joints, I would always recommend just do the drill, put the brass wire to the lengths right there, join them together, then do the plastic cement, and that should give you a much more stronger, firm joint connection, so it hopefully doesn't break. Usually you also have multiple of these. You can also buy a pack like this one right here. So I kind of broke my 1.0 pinwheel drill. But you should buy a package. I think I bought this for like $7 or $8 on Amazon. This one's still pretty good. I still use these when I need them. But when I need multiple different ones, I did buy this on in the pack with other stuff too. This one has like a little drill right here, plus also little drill blades, which you always are useful need. And not just that, there's also going to be further down the line that you're also going to need to. This will be, I guess, we're going to go transition from the drill bits to the machine drill, because sometimes you're going to be needing these. This one here is one of the machine drills, or sanders, or this right here you're going to be sometimes needing when you're doing a little bit much more better projects or doing a lot more cutting stuff, because usually these are bought with packs and tools. Actually, right here, a lot of these for a lot of model kits. This is for later down the line when you're doing further customization. Like what I'm going to do, which I'm kind of doing right now, is because I'm kind of extending the legs on one of my model kits to make it a little bit more taller. So I'm cutting the legs off in half and adding plot plates, which are basically plastic plates, onto where the leg joints are at to extend them to make them a little bit bigger. And usually I'm using the blade for this to cut the pieces in half so I can make it faster, because though that's a little bit dangerous, usually these do come in tool packs, which are always good, so when you need them. And they also come with different types of files for sanding and whatnot. Now you can see right here, this one's like very used. This is one of the ones I use a lot when I'm usually sanding, usually when I'm taking care of the nub marks. You also get the little different types of head pieces right here as well. You can see the golden ones. Those are the little head pieces that you swap out of here. That you sometimes a little bit tight, but you want it tight so the thing doesn't come flying out, which has happened to me once or twice. Usually you swap these out, and then when you swap them out, you put them back in. You just file them back, but before you fully seal them in, usually whatever bit head you're putting in, usually saw it in, and then you push. No, for this one, usually you just push the button in until you hear it clip, and it's basically tight, and then you can just noise I'm going to say noise sound right here in a second. Sorry about that. And it's going to vibrate fast. And this one has like 5, I guess we call 5 power points or 5 modes. So you have like mode 1, which is slow, which is usually also this power 2. So sometimes, depending if it's full charge, it's usually good. So usually it's pretty fast to super fast. And usually use super fast when I'm using the blade. So when I'm trying to cut piece part off. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Going on to the next part. Actually, we're going to actually go into the next. We're actually going to talk a little bit more about the plastic mat right here. This thing right here, I'm going to say, I wish I knew this back then when I was doing model kits. Because the amount of times I had to use super glue to repair stuff and then stuff still breaks always annoyed me. Because I always also bought putty as well, which I have no clue where my putty's at to try to fix the stuff. But after I learned plastic cement is basically what it does is basically you put it on where the plastic piece is broken, and then it basically binds the plastic together, melting it, basically fusing it back together to basically become almost solid and whole and basically almost new again. I kind of wish I knew about this back when I started into the hobby, because the amount of pieces that are broken, especially one of the pieces that I think I hate, and I think a lot of people also hate too, which are C-clips. These are clips onto usually joints either on the back side of a model kit, usually trying to join together either some back adjustment pieces or some wing attachments. But yeah, I kind of wish I knew this back then, because this would help a lot, especially with things break off. So I would recommend picking up one of these because they're actually useful. Though I will say be careful and dangerous not to drop it, because it is technically toxic and very dangerous. So always wear gloves and whatnot. But yeah, there's other stuff too, like primer stuff too from Mr. Hobby. That's also why I would also recommend doing a little bit more extensive research when you do like more stuff, especially when you're doing when you're using these kind of types of liquids and liquid tools and whatnot. But yeah, this is very useful. Going off from that, we're gonna go with paints, or more accurately, if you're gonna start painting, one of the things I do recommend to buy, either in a bulk or just pack, because usually you can get these on Amazon for like 15-20 bucks or cheaper if you can. Gunpla markers. They're very useful. If you're not somebody who's gone into the hobby or wanting to start to paint but don't know what paint to use. Granted, when I started the hobby, I was using these acrylic paints right here. They're not bad. They're really good. They're quick drying, easy to clean up acrylic paints, and I've been using these, and I used these a lot during my younger years. But Gunpla markers are very useful. Either you can apply and just paint them like kind of like a marker. Basically like that. You can just do like a little bit of that, paint the pieces off. Actually, let's go to example. I mean, I can always sand it back, but another good example of this is, I did not want to paint this red, but you know what? Screw it. We're going to do it. Okay, we're going to just joint the piece here so we can do this. So you can always, with the Gunpla marker, this is a little bit test right here. I'll clean this up later, but you can always paint what you need, depending on which piece you can do. And then doing multiple coats, eventually that will get a much more pronounced color. But usually Gunpla markers are really good, useful for beginners. You can either just mark them as is, or yours is an extension set. I do technically have it, but I don't know where it's at. It's a little sprayer system where you attach the Gunpla marker onto it, and the thing you attach it onto there, and then the sprayer sprays it on and does a good spray. I just got to make sure the Gunpla marker is full when you do that. And the sprayer does use, depending on the situation on the sprayer, you can either get canisters, which are like little small air canisters, which I will say be careful as well. So read the instructions for that, and wear gloves when you're handling that, because the tingling sensations when I was not wearing gloves when I was having to open it up. Or you can get like a little mini compressor, which eventually I will get myself a mini compressor, because I rather not deal with the air canisters anymore. But Gunpla markers come in multiple different colors, especially nowadays. So you can get whatever colors. You can get regular colors, or you can get EX colors, which are kind of like almost chrome color of each color, or metallic, which is really good. Granted, these are all my red ones, because a lot of my customs, or my personal customs, are all red units. So I have a lot of red. And going from Gunpla markers, we also have panel liners, which right here is one of my panel liners. These right here are very useful when you need to panel line model kits. Actually, let's bring back Start Burning for a good example of this. as we can just pop off. Let's pop off the Starburning's leg. Don't worry, he can. There we go. He can stand right there for the meantime. Just only needs the one leg. So for these, I'm gonna do a little bit of demonstration here. So panel line, see, there's a panel line right here between the leg right here, so you can do that. Actually, the panel line goes. And usually these panel lines usually are helpful when you want to give much more detail for your model kit. Actually, right there now, I can see a little bit much more of the detail right there with the color. Sometimes you got to bring these out a little bit. Well, bro, you can see right there, that right there is giving a little bit much more detail. Before it was just solid white. Nothing out. Now, it's a little bit of panel line there. The detail's actually now more pronounced. And these are usually helpful when you want to make your model kits a little bit more pronounced. And usually they don't mark off too much, which is always good. Doing a little bit of demonstration here. Just be careful, just be slowly and careful on these. Granted, these can be erased very easily, so shouldn't too much. Shouldn't be too much on your model kit, so it shouldn't mark too much. But yeah, it's gonna be very detailed what was on this. Oh no, that's me not being detailed, because usually I usually have my little vice grips for these to hold these when I'm doing these, but I don't have it right now. But you can see right there the detail work before, which we can actually see on the left one, on the right leg. On the right leg, you can see right there, not that much detail work. Now on the left leg, where we actually did the panel lining, brings it out much more better to give it much more detail, and it looks actually pretty good. And panel liners are always useful for that. As you can see on the rest of the Star Burning, it is panel lined. Its face, its head, the Vulcans right there, its arm joints, everything in there. All of its detail and panel line, that's using the panel liner right there. And it's been pretty good. So one of the things, if you do not, like, this is the thing of, if you don't want to do painting yet, I do recommend getting panel liners, because they're, once again, useful just to bring out your model kit, just to bring out the detail work. And usually makes the model kits look way better. I can see with my Star Burning right here. I use all the panel lining to make all the little detail works, all the inscribing that you can see right there. Before, that was all white or not painted at all, so you wouldn't be able to see it. Now with the panel lining, what's it called? You can see all the little small detail works on this, and it looks pretty well, nice and detailed, and looks pretty good. Now into the next thing. Now this one right here is going to be just an assortment of tools. What's it called? Usually on the bulk pack that I was mentioning about, usually screwdriver here is really, they usually give you screwdrivers, usually the very thin one right here. And these are usually useful, especially when when you do some accents, like if you put a piece wrong together, but you snap it in, but you can't take it out. Granted, a lot of times you would use your X-Acto blade, but one of the reasons why I sometimes do not like using the X-Acto blade, because sometimes the X-Acto blade breaks, and sometimes it snaps off and flying off, and I really don't like using that. Sometimes having a very thin screwdriver like this one. Usually these sometimes come with everybody, like the Gunpla tool pack. So sometimes you do a very thin screwdriver, and these are still very useful to be able to pry pieces off, and always have a screwdriver when you're prying off. Just very thin one, so you'll be able to go through like the plastic to pry it off. And then you have assortment of brushes. Right here, this is all when you like do painting and whatnot. Which, here's another type of paint too that I also usually get at Hobby Lobby. These right here, like Gunpla paints. Very thick ones too. But what's it called? These are Gunpla paints right here that I also use. They're really nice and well done. What's it called? These right here, like I mentioned before, good. Usually, once you get the painting, and once you're getting a little bit much more good in painting, where you feel like you can, usually get an assortment amount of paints. I usually get myself the general, regular, cheap paint brushes that I usually see either at dollar stores or on Walmart or whatnot. These guys I've had for years. Some are a little bit much more different. I am getting new paint brushes because I'm starting out doing now miniatures now, like kind of Warhammer and other stuff. So I am swapping out and getting new paint brushes for them, mainly those little stubby ones. But usually paint brushes are going to be useful when you need them for doing custom kits and whatnot. Also, another thing too, later down the line, you will be needing alligator clips. This is when you do paint stuff and you want the pieces to hang. Usually alligator clips are going to be useful to be able to hold your model kit pieces within a little container. I don't know where my container's at, but usually have them in a little container or whatnot that holds them in so the pieces don't fall out. So alligator clips are going to be useful. You can get them on cheap, either on Amazon for like a good bulk, or Hobby Lobby, or if you get lucky. So I have seen them in Dollar Tree once or twice before for a good amount of cheap. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And with that, folks, that right there is it for this, I guess, my beginner's guide to Gunpla. This is going to be part 1 of a series I'll probably be doing incrementally throughout the year. Slowly but surely doing like more stuff like tips and tricks and other stuff too that are going to be involved when doing Gunpla. So I do hope you guys love this video. I know it's going to be a long one too, but this is kind of like a whole tutorial thing of what you're going to need in the beginning, and then all the tools that you're going to get. There's still more stuff they're going to need later down the line, but those are later down the line once you get to like intermediate expertise, when you start doing more different stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much it for right now. So if you did like the video and did enjoy it, please consider dropping like, share, and subscribe, as I always do appreciate it. And as always, folks, I'll be doing more Gunpla model kits, figures, card reviews, and more stuff later down the line. And also be doing more of this kind of type of video of like beginner stuff, hobbies, tips, and tricks, and more stuff later down the line. With that away, folks, this is Pyro'S signing out, and I'll see you guys on the next one.